Personally, I love racing in salt water. It floats you so much better than a freshwater swim, which helps someone like me that is not a natural swimmer. But the Mediterranean, it is not like any other ocean on the planet. Yes, it is beautiful beyond belief, and in Nice it has this beautiful blue hue that is absolutely unmatched anywhere. But no matter how beautiful it was or how calm it looked on race morning, it always felt like there was a chop on the water. It always felt like there was a current pushing against me. It felt like the Mediterranean really did have a spirit that was just taunting me and challenging me the entire swim. It was totally the opposite of the swim that I would have in Kona. No matter how rough it was there or how much current was pushing against me, it always felt like it was calm. I had one goal in Nice that year, and it was to minimize the damage from the top competitors and to come out of the water with at least one great cyclist. I did accomplish that in the first leg of the race. I was inside of Mike Pigg, an athlete who in the 1980s was dynamite on the bike. Yves Cordier of France and Rob Brel of Holland, the other two that I'd hoped to latch onto, had plans of their own. They were off. I could barely see Brel when I exited the water. Cordier was already out of sight, and both of them were pulling away. My only hope for a great ride was to keep with Pigg and hopefully set myself up for an attack on the run. The equipment was changing rapidly. This was the first year that I would race with aero bars, and the first year that I would be using them to negotiate the high-speed, harrowing descents that were the hallmark of the bike course in Nice. It was no easy task to manage 180-degree turns on narrow roads with cliffs off to the side with those bars, let me tell you. And to make it worse, I was riding a disc wheel in the rear. It was heavy, and it was making it even more difficult to change direction as I went around the turns. I gave up time on the endless string of climbs, yes, because of that rear wheel. I gave up time on the descents because of how my handlebars worked, but I made it all up and more on the final long stretch of the bike that is actually over 40 kilometers of cycling that is nearly dead flat and into an absolutely relentless headwind. The sport was evolving fast and was no longer dominated by the Americans. Rob Burrell, the champion from the previous year, was there, and he was the guy that I was most concerned about. He was tough. He was ready. This year the decision had been made to move Nice to May 27th to make it the prime event on the first part of the season, then let the Ironman hold down the fall calendar. It proved to be the right move. The field was the deepest it had ever been in its 7-year history. This was race number 8 for Nice. It would be my 6th. I'd won the first 5 that I had entered there. The previous 2 I didn't race, focusing on Kona, but now it seemed like the stars were lining up in my favor. Coming into transition, I was still with Pigg. Goal number 2 was accomplished. I'd been able to stay with a guy who now had paced the bike perfectly, and I was entering my turf, the run. It was a 32-kilometer out-and-back course, about 20 miles, almost spot on. The first 10 miles went due west along the Mediterranean, then the 10 miles after the turn due east back to the finish. It was dead flat. There was this dull, hot, humid wind that comes off the water that did nothing to cool me. The run in Nice is the ultimate combination of needing both speed and endurance. Just being able to hold a steady pace, that wouldn't cut it because somebody was snapping their legs. They would pass you later in the run. But a fast pace meant nothing if I didn't have the endurance to hold up to it and someone would blow by me as I blew up. I was able to pull away from Pigg pretty early in the run, but there was still a lot of work to do. Burrell was charging ahead. Yves Cordier from France was putting his stamp on the race at the lead. It was extremely difficult to challenge him. See, Cordier was from Nice, and he was pulling the entire region's cheering for him. These 2 competitors were tough, and the only way my 6th victory was going to happen was if I could dramatically pick up my pace after an already fast first half of the run. Even if I'd been in the lead, the run in Nice would have been extremely tough mentally. What made it so difficult was that you could see the entire long, slow curve of the road and the finish almost from the moment that you make the turn halfway through the run. To manage that, I had to go into this kind of deep meditative state where I stopped being concerned about time or the distance that I had left or where my competitors were. I had to put myself into a focus that was like running in my own private tunnel that cut out everything from the outside. That imaginary tunnel was like not being able to see the outside world. It was like not being able to see the light at the opening that was saying I was getting closer to the finish. I had to just go into the tunnel and run and have my focus on my foot strike, my turnover, my mantra, which was just simple: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, over and over. If I looked up hoping to see that I was closer, it would never look closer. It was the great mirage of the Nice run. Back into the tunnel, no regard for the finish, no regard for my competition, just cover the return faster than the first half. I did pull away from Pig early. I eventually passed Burrell, the Nice champion from the previous year. I passed Yves Cordier, who I would have one of the greatest battles in my career with 3 years later in 1992 in the same race. I had taken 2 years hiatus from racing Nice after winning 5 straight. Coming back was filled with uncertainty. Anything less than a victory would have been talked about as a failure, but the magic of Nice pulled me through. I would win my 6th title this year. The race that in 1982 became my first great triathlon victory was still one where I was able to come out on top even with all its complexity and its risks on the bike. I was able to surpass the toughest field ever to assemble in the event's history. The Nice Triathlon was first held over Thanksgiving weekend at the end of November in 1982. It was invented and packaged to ride the success the Ironman had experienced earlier that year. The idea was to go up against Ironman and to become the greatest triathlon.
Winner here 6 times out of 6, Mark Allen.
By far the best one to win. You know, each time you do a race, to be able to come back and do it again, it's like, oh my God, you know, the number of things that are counting against you are just, they're slowly adding up, and at some point they'll catch me. But it's very satisfying, and you know, right now I feel really relieved to have the race over. I can kind of be a normal human being for a couple days now.
It was time to celebrate, and afterwards, looking out over the beautiful Mediterranean waters, it seemed like now the beautiful blue ocean was looking back at me with a huge smile.